For us, Matias, it is an honor to present you with the award MCA Festival 2025 in recognition of having accepted the mission of remembering us of our stellar lineage, in addition to being a humble, honest, and true support for a sure advance towards new humanity. Thank you very much, Matias. A big round of applause for him, for Matias.
Hola.
Hello. Thank you. Well, thank you. I liked it all, the opening. That makes me very embarrassed. Well, 15 minutes. Well, thank you for all for being here, for having come to share, to listen, to feel, to be part of this transformation of consciousness that we are all experiencing constantly on this earth. And today I was being asked, and what is your talk about today? I said, I don't know. I don't remember. I don't remember. I'm the worst rememberer in the history.
No me acuerdo
I don't remember anything I had to do, what I had to say. But I did have the essence that today was something about the I am. And I think yesterday I also explained a little bit why the sun. Lately, I have no idea what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Yesterday, I explained a little bit about what it means to remember and what we are used to talking about remembering as if it were remembering things from the past, data, and so on. But in order to arrive at certain information, it is important to forget, to empty the mind, to leave oneself blank, and from there to let the information flow, and that we become in a certain way like a bridge, a channel for certain information, certain data. So for a while now, I decided never to know what I'm going to say, when or why or anything, and just simply go and see what happens. In the last few years, in recent times, first I wanted to know how many people did the path of the I am or follow the path of the I am, those who followed me. Good. Well, wow. Thank you for following the path. For those who didn't follow it or don't know what it's all about, it was a path that I understood I had to do when I was being. Well, I'm going to say, why am I going to clear this out? Because I had been planning for 3 years a spectacular project, and everything was canceled due to the pandemic. And so I was asking my guys, the teachers, for 3 months, why? Why did they make me practice for 3 months something that didn't happen afterwards? And there was silence, nothing was happening, nothing. One day, I was caught up in the pandemic in France because I was studying French, because to go to one of the nodes in the planet, only you were accepted if you spoke French. And I was stuck in France without being able to talk to anybody because I was stuck in France in an apartment. I couldn't even practice French. And of course, all that was canceled. Then at one point, I didn't know why I was doing any of this. I went to the bathroom like any human being. And at that moment, boom, all the information about everything I had to do comes down, which was the path of the I am. I said, but why in this moment? That is so, right? Not meditating under a tree. No. It was the worst moment, absurd situation that the information was downloaded. And I understood at that moment why. Because I had forgotten. I had forgotten about the whole project. I had forgotten absolute everything. And that was the most blank out moment I was in that day. It was the moment with the greatest clarity, so to speak. Then that is why sometimes you have to take into an account that one makes a lot of effort to get into the alignment, and can actually catch you in red-handed mess in the hands doing anything other than that has nothing to do with it. It can happen. And that path, the way of the I am, I had been planning it since 2017. The intention of this path went down the August 8th, 2015, inside the Great Pyramid of Egypt by mistake, because someone gave me the gift of entering the pyramid that I didn't know that the pyramid could be rented. I don't know if anybody knew. Well, if anybody wants to go, you can rent it. And it was the first time someone rented the pyramid for me for my birthday. I didn't want to go, and I felt obligated to having to be there. I went. I was inside, and at that moment, the top chief appeared, who is Jehuti, Thoth. Some know him as Hermes Trismegistus, with whom I had never spoken to in my life. And that day he appears and begins to show me the planetary network and all the things we had to do in the next years to come, and how many others were already doing things. It was like, this is a machine that you have to keep refining and keep working on it. And it starts passing all the information. When I see all this, I began to understand that I have to go to different points on Earth to connect certain places, to do it specifically in a specific way. And all that information required me to travel to different points on Earth, specifically 96 places on Earth that had to be touched to activate the planetary network. But at the end of 2019, in a meditation, I think, I'm told a virus will help save the world. So what did I do? I started designing to put planetary activation crystals inside a virus. Have you ever seen the image of this best virus we have in humanity that is called bacteriophages? Some of you know it. You would have to look it up for a bit. They're all around here. That is, you all have some on you. Bacteriophages eat bacteria. That is what it means. So they help us because they eat things that can harm us. But when you look at them very closely, you say, is this a viral technology? Because really, the form is technology. And it precisely represents the planetary network. The virus is a spectacular thing. So what did I do? I said, well, I'm going to put the crystals inside the virus. I'm going to put things like that. And I'm going to take it, anchoring it in different parts of the world. The point is that the virus was COVID, clearly, because after 3 months, everything was closed. And the reason why this happened to us, I was asking, why is this happening? They said, because the world has to align. And for the world to be aligned, the mind of the world has to be quiet for an instant. And that month, 3 months from the quarantines that the entire planet experienced, it was the first time that the entire planet was silenced for an instant. And that all people could think, what am I doing with my life? I don't know if it happened to you, but after COVID, many people started to awake their consciousness to look for a different path, to think about what to do with their life, to separate too. Of course, 3 months living together without going out, one understands who they live with. Then the changes of life began, the planetary changes began, and a lot of people began to change. Clearly, a virus was helping awaken something, and all viruses have done through the history of biology. Yes, viruses have helped all of history to transform the interior world. Cells evolved through viruses as well. So, within that process, that I was locked up in France for, because one of the nodes that is in the Indian Ocean, which is reachable after 14 days by boat, but only 10 people who speak French are accepted on the boat. So it was very difficult to get to that island. So that's why I was in France. So when I was in that place and I received a message of what I had to do, that it was no longer the planetary network, I say, how do I access 96 nodes of Earth without traveling? Then at that moment in the bathroom was when my guide said to me, what place on Earth represents all the points? To be able to enter to all the points of the Earth, you have to go to the center of the Earth. And the only way you can go to the center of the Earth is if one enters in a machine that is capable of representing the whole Earth. That machine is the Great Pyramid of Giza. So what he told me was, we have to go to recalibrate the 96 nodes of the Earth through the 365 cycles of the year. And through that, you will align certain points of the Earth. Then, as soon as the quarantine was open in France, I flew to Egypt, and it was the first time in my life that I lived in the same place for so long, which for me was a trauma. In other words, it was a trauma to be there, to live for a year in front of the pyramid. And people would say, wow, so nice. No.
No sé.
I don't know who has been to Egypt here, but I think they've had enough now. It's interesting to live in Egypt, but I was alone. There was no tourist, there was no one. I was the only one who for 3 months entered every day into the pyramid. In other words, I was the only tourist in Giza who was going to do the same thing every day. It was like people started to suspect. It was like, what is he doing? There was one there still hates me a lot. But all the others, well, we made friends with everyone else. The thing is that every day I had to go in, even if it was only 5 minutes, sit down, look in a different direction, receive information, write it down, and then tell it. The first day I got there, the first thing I asked was, what do I do? What am I doing here? What am I doing? And the first thing I receive is a feeling of being heartbroken. A feeling of something is broken within me. And I was made to begin to remember all the stories of the broken hearts on Earth. Any story you can think of when you fell in love and had your heart broken, it has to do with that broken heart when it's so intense that you can't feel any emotion because you're feeling all the emotions at the same moment and suddenly you feel empty. The only thing you could feel was a stunning void that made no sense at all. That was the first thing I felt. And then in that rupture, he tells me, hear that voice that says, that thump thump that is not working is the mismatch between the point of gravity and the movement. The humans call it the I and the am. Therefore, this point of gravity that has to be calibrated, which is the broken heart of the universe, that we all live it in our lives in different ways, it's a cosmic mismatch that each living being experiences it in a completely different way, but that refers to a disorder in the laws of time-space, in which we are all living a little off axis. And we're going off axis a little more and more. And in that story that he's telling me, he tells me, therefore, to do this task, we have to walk a path. That is the path of the I and the am. The path of the I and the am that I did for a year between 2020 and 2021, and that I was publishing it, and that we were all doing it day by day. It was a path that was not only of that moment, but it is a constant path. It is a path, as I said yesterday, of harmonization between two aspects that they make the being, which is time and space. Time and space are for us the essential coordinates of understanding who we are and why we're here. It is what allows us to understand why we basically exist. However, for the universe, time and space does not exist. It's a perception. For time and space to exist, the one has to divide itself. It has to fragment itself. It breaks in different ideas, pieces, and by understanding each of those ideas and experiencing each of those ideas, it can understand. But to experience it, it has to find a point of reference of observation and the movement. A point of reference, movement. Point of reference, movement. It has to get out of itself and find a point of reference. We are always looking for points of references. Sometimes mom, sometimes it's dad, sometimes it's a teacher, a friend, a partner, someone we admire a lot, or a plant. I don't know, an animal. Everyone has a different point of reference in their life. It's like an axis that helps them understand. This is what I'm observing. And what I observe is what allows me to know where I'm going. So we can have many points of observation, but we humans normally do is project it onto the other. Our idea is, that person is the one that helps me. That person is the one that I idolize. That person is the one I love. That one. So we project it on the outside, but let's remember that in the universe, all that does not exist. The universe, it's only one thing projected out. Therefore, what I idolize is something that I am observing about myself. What I love is something that I'm observing about myself. What bothers me is something that I'm observing about myself constantly. Only that I am fragmented. So on fractalized. So on that path, what I understand is that I am that. I, which is looking over there, am that which is there. I, who turns over here, am that which is there. Therefore, when I'm lost and I don't know where I have to observe, I don't know how to be. I am not. The I am is the movement that gives the access to understand where it's looking at. Therefore, what he said was, sit like I in the center of the pyramid and go changing a degree direction constantly to every point on earth and say, I am Tierra del Fuego. I am Galapagos. I am, and so on. So I was moving in that direction. However, when I said, well, I'm going to do the planetary activation from that place, I sit down, I look in the direction of the earth, and I am anguish appears. I said, we fucked up. I am politics. I am, and suddenly a lot of concepts, emotions, ideas appeared, science, spirituality, a lot of different topics from different angles in which I observes. So I go observing my own path in everything. And in order to understand it, I had to position myself in that vision, integrate it, experience it, go through all the necessary processes to understand why it exists, and order it. And then do tick tack like the clock to the next degree, and so on. In the universe, the I, which is God, is constantly doing that with every degree of the universe. That is, which each of these beings that are us, not only us, with every atom. Imagine what a job. If it's difficult for us, even with 3 people. So, obviously, that the divinity does not sit to think about what emotional relationship it has with each one. The process is different. But what does happen is that it circulates throughout the entire sphere of existence degree by degree to be able to observe something concrete that helps us to shape the idea of who I am. So, one of the things I learned on that path was that the I is not someone, it is a point of observation. It is not a person, it is a point of observation. Many times we say, I am called, I am, but in reality, we're actually speaking for ourselves. For example, if it's a point of observation, why? My name is Matias, but I am not Matias. It's the name my mother chose for me. So it's how the world knows me, but I'm not Matias. Your names, who gave them to you? Who put it? Who chose your frequency? So you're not that person. You're being what others put upon you. I am from Chile. You could say, are you sure? If all humans are migrants, so to what extent? No, because one says, well, yes, Spaniards. No, but Mapuches are also immigrants. They crashed through Alaska. I mean, a long time ago, but we've all been immigrants and we've all been somewhere else. Where are we from? What culture, what religion, and all of that? Oh, thank you. They're just perceptions. I'm already healing. They are just perceptions. And now I have to blow my snots in front of everybody? It's a perception. I already learned how to blow my nose when I was 25.
Bueno,
well, then it's a perception. Therefore, the I is just a point of observation that is loaded with a lot of ideas and preconceptions. Therefore, to reach to the point of observation, to the I have to disarticulate everything that is the belief of the I. The I in Latin or Greek is called ego. Ego. So we have a concept of the ego, for example, which is all that burden of the name, the culture, the nationality, the religion, the tradition. All of that is the weight, the burden we all have. All that weight makes us have so much gravity that suddenly our existence sinks. And we attract things to ourselves that perhaps do not correspond to us just because of the amount of weight we have been accumulating of things that we are not. For example, I don't know if if you've ever seen a video explaining that the Earth is not actually revolving around the sun. It's like falling towards the sun. Did you know that? That the planets are falling towards the sun? Because in the multidimensionality, the sun is so much gravitation, has so much gravitational weight that it bends time and space, causing all the things around it to roll towards it. Imagine a fabric. We put a ball. The fabric, what does it do? It does this, right? So if I pull a small ball and I throw it, it starts to spin around. And sooner or later, it will reach the center because it is going to fall due to gravity. Imagine that the Earth doesn't have so much gravity. It only has the moon dragging it down. But the sun, it has planets, asteroids, comets, a lot of things. The heavier the ego is, more things it attracts to itself. So here's what it makes it. The more weight we put on who I am, the I as a person, the more burden we put on it, more weight is going to fall upon us. So in order to be able to stop attracting those things and start being the all, I have to polish the I of all the layers so that I can really observe, contemplate my truth. The point of observation that is the I then is where I position myself in life and from where I observe everything that is around. So from there, I go looking for the axis. Where do I put the next foot to move to the next axis? And then go looking again for a new axis and so forth. This way, the I is simply my point of observation, my anchor point of observation. The am has to do with the all that moves when I change my point of view. When I change my point of observation, everything that happens in that space is who I am. So everything we see in our reality is what I am, because it is our point of observation. So when we're looking at very negative things all the time, what am I? Negative, right? If I am looking at positive things all the time, I am positive. Also, be careful that a very positive environment has many protons, and that is called toxicity. In other words, being very positive is not good either for the universe. That's why we need electrons, negative ions. It is important for there to be electrical conductivity so we can create toroids, magnetism, and generate life. Both are needed. So in that moment, what do? Positive, negative, positive, negative, positive. That constant movement, the negative, if you notice, is what allows me to change the point of observation. That is, when all the things that are happening in my life are chaotic or disastrous, it's because I'm looking for where to put my foot until I find the axis again. I am all that movement. I am all that movement. The eye observes. When I was inside the pyramid, then I looked at every point. I had to become every motion of every aspect that I was talking about. Therefore, those who followed me know that I went through everything, through all possible emotions. I mean, I shit on myself in cancer. Sorry for saying it in this way, but you know what it is to go 30 days deep into what that means. I mean, I imagine those who are from cancer, sorry for them to live like this. I have my greatest compassion. As a lion, this is only 30 days. So the process I was living and that many were accompanying me was an intention to live degree by degree that point and change of observation, which is something that happens in our internal world, but in the great external world as well, everywhere. That is, when we move from one place to another, a city, a country, a different culture, also we change a point of observation and amplify our point of observation to understand greater things. This is why it is also important to understand that when we talk about the I am, there is no philosophy, nor science, nor religion, no spirituality, no method, nothing that leads you to the absolute truth. It's impossible because the only way to get to the I am, is to constantly change degree, change degree, change the point of observation. Therefore, we need to listen to all as much as possible, live as much as possible, feel as much as possible. It is essential to expand the mind towards the infinity. In order to get to the I am, I have to expand so much that I suddenly disappear and become a sphere. So, how many degrees does a sphere have? 360 degrees. Those 360 degrees, our planet, is structured in such a perfect way that we have 364 days and something. That is, there is about 5 days that are called out of time or temporal correction. Those 360 degrees, in other words, for each day of the year represents a degree of different vision. Imagine thinking about it in this way. Think about your birthday. Not the 1st of January, because it's a lie. The first day of the year is not January 1st. That's another topic of discussion. It starts the day you were born. Think about your birthday. That day begins the year. That day that the year begins now, think that now you have 360 degrees to create the sphere, and that each day you are going to live is a different degree. But what if I repeat the day exactly the same for 360 days without changing absolutely anything? What does the sphere become? In one line. And that's when I stop thinking like God and become a being who thinks linearly, where I constantly repeat the same things because I'm not changing my point of observation. And I go overloading one single vision to which I call it the I am that. But in reality, I'm just creating a line. So think if every day of your lives you designate yourself to learn something new, or to ask yourself something, or to look at something different that you didn't look at before, but it can be totally something silly. It doesn't have to be something very big. Something silly that changes your perception. For me, during 360 days, they made me explain different concepts every day to every bone. I don't know about those who followed me those 365 days, how they ended that year, but every day was, today we're going to talk about the leaves. I said, why are we going to talk about photosynthesis? Not even at school. There were a lot of people who said, whoa, it seems like we did a college degree in a year for a bunch of subjects together. And it was because the intention was that we could open our minds every day to a completely different thought than the one we had. Nothing of what I shared necessarily could have been the truth, but it did open many questions that surely later on one opened a new book to check, and this, where does it come from and why is it like this? I don't know. And some would say, no, but that's not like this, Matias. I said, obviously it's not like that. I mean, and look how humans are, that we try to say, no, that's a lie, or that's the truth. No, what I was doing is opening up a little bit a different channel for you to look for other answers. So imagine if we could all on our birthday set the intention that from today, every day, I propose to ask a different question to someone or something, or learn about something or a silly thing. What that does is open up the brain to connect the synapses of our brain. All the neurons in our brain begin to work in a different way. They begin to work in a network, not in a pattern. We are trapped in patterns. Why? A pattern is when, for example, I go every day to the same place, down the same street. Have you realized that when you do this, there comes a time when you arrive at the place and you don't even know how you did it? That happens, right? I mean, oops, I've arrived and I don't remember I passed through that street or anything. Why? Because it's called a pattern. The neurons already recognize the pattern, so they don't even question it. They just do it. This is an evolutionary matter that is very useful, which helps us save energy. Because if we couldn't do that, we'd all be crazy. So, in this way, we save energy on the synapses. However, what happens with this is that we are stuck in boxes of which we cannot go out because we're all walking through the same path, and for so long repeating the same thing, we create the line very strongly. Imagine how many of you repeat almost the same things daily. That is, if you think about it, since you get up till you go to sleep, how many do almost the same thing? It is very difficult to change, but if every day we add something different, if we put ourselves like a proposal, every day I do something different, the brain has to pay attention to understanding something different, and therefore the I am opens. The I am then is not just a matter of spiritual path, it is a matter of brain work that allows us to open our minds to understand very large concepts. When we individually do this, we are not just doing it for us, but for everyone around us and for the earth. Because the earth is also a living being that makes synapses. And if humans always repeat the same problems, the earth will always offer us the same conflicts because it's called a pattern. Every culture will reflect the same pattern over and over again until the end of times of this planet if we do not open consciousness to different choices every day. Therefore, when Thoth told me at that time, feel the moment when your heart was broken again. And I remember that feeling. One of the strongest emotions I felt in that instant was the moment when time and space fractalized. That moment when time and space fractalizes and suddenly a dissonance is created in the cosmic order in which an arrhythmia appears. That arrhythmia implies that something is out of time, that that the universe is constantly trying to correct something called the great cosmic error. And it's very arrogant, right, to say that there's a mistake. So, what are we going to call an error? Error actually comes from the word errante, wanderer. Everybody knows what a wanderer is. A wanderer is the one who walks without a path. It's the one who does not know where he's going. So what does error mean? Error means to go towards something or do something without knowing the direction very well. What happens in the universe that suddenly, and this is also very beautiful thing about the electrons. I don't know if you've ever seen an electron. It's difficult, right? Did you feel it? Some of you? You never touched it, right? But there, you feel one, an electron. Ouch. Well, but the interesting thing about the electrons is that people who study them still don't understand what's going on. I mean, what is this? Because it's there, it's not there, it's moving, it's not moving. Oh, it's gone. It appears. It's not very well understood yet what it is, but everybody says, oh yeah, it's an electron. But it's not understood. So that's an error from the point of universal view. We could say an electron is an error, however, without an electron, we do not exist. In other words, a wanderer who's moving without any sense is what gives sense to all existence. That's why getting lost, forgetting, etc., is what gives meaning to remembering, finding yourself, and so on. There is no understanding or existence without being in its opposite, so to speak. So in reality, it is what it gives it meaning. So the error, the wonder of the universe, what it produces is a constant mismatch. On our planet, those 4.5 days are called 360 degrees. Oh, we would be gods if we had 360 days. But someone came up with pushing us a little further away from the sun and having 4.5 days. That doesn't make sense. And that's how we are now, rotating anywhere. So why does the cycle doesn't close completely? Because if not, there would be no evolution. There is no transformation. There is no movement of the I am. There would be no I am, the cosmic consciousness. However, in this constant practice, there are two paths. One, let's correct the error. If we all now put ourselves in agreement position and we correct the error, everything would go poof, and then nothing exists. Forget about absolutely everything. So, eons ago, or since the origin of the universe itself agreed and said, let's not correct the error. There is another name for the error. Lucifer, they called it. Some here know that one, right? Lucifer in chemical elements is called phosphorus. Do you also know that one? I hope so. phosphorus is the chemical element that allows DNA to exist. In other words, every time you think about DNA, you are carrying Lucifer inside.
¿Sí?
What does Lucifer allow? That the DNA multiplies and creates new options. Basically, phosphorus, the bearer of the light, the one that brings the light, phosphorus, or lucus fetus, is the one that brings the light, carries the light, light bringer. But in order for the light to be perceived in the evolution, the phosphorus has to create a little tiny small error for us to perceive it. We could say that the first great gift that the devil gives us is to be able to see God, because God is no thing. But with a slight mistake, I am able to see everything. So we have two paths. Or we destroy the one who creates the error and we disappear, or we constantly try to calibrate the error in order to continue perceiving divinity through being an errante or wanderer. And that's what we call harmony or music of the spheres. Did you hear that? Yes? Coldplay, right? For example? And there's something behind that. The music of the spheres, which is the perfect mathematics of creation. What it does is show how following the correct codes of every electron, proton of the light, of every molecule in the universe, of every particle and every wave in the universe. If I align myself with that, I can continue to perceive the universe without needing to be lost. So it is called cosmic harmonization. It is the harmonization of everything that exists. The ancient called this the constant initiation path of the I am. The constant path of the I am. The knowing that I have to get lost to find myself, and that there are mathematical and geometrical calculations that can allow me to find those steps. So when the universal consciousness realizes this, everything that is going to be designed later on in the universe is based on those simple steps that are laws, that are geometric structures that are going to be repeating itself over and over again, transformed by slight errors, giving us room to perceive different visions of the am. So the famous triangle with an eye in the middle, for example, you may have seen it more than once, right? Everyone today will say like, Illuminati, it's bad. However, it's just a tetrahedron. Therefore, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a tetrahedron. That somebody put an eye there, it's because there's much more math behind it. And that's because obviously those people understood the math. And those of us who still don't understand it, they think, oh, they control us. I don't know if you noticed that. It's like being in a house and say, Dad, I want to be free. As long as you're under my roof, no. I mean, as long as you're under my roof, here are the rules. If I understand how this house is maintained, you're going to have to follow the house rules. So, well, all those people that understood the house rules of the math and so on know how to play the game of that house. Those who don't understand it, yet we complain and we are conspiracy theorists. But there will come a time when we understand how the right path works. Then we will also be the ones who make those conspiracies, but for others further ahead. So the path of this triangle, this famous triangle, multiplies into another triangle and another triangle and another triangle, and it creates by division more fractals that design more paths and more options until the form from a virus, a bacteria is formed, a cell, etc., etc., and then we end up being a fractal of that reality. And so also a country, a planet, a solar system, a galaxy is the same code constantly with slight errors that allow it to differentiate itself so that the I can contemplate itself in the am. So from this point of view as well, I can also share the mission that I personally have been doing and that many have been joining, which is the eldest on this earth. And I'm not talking about Atlantis or anything. The eldest who realized this were the wanderers who got lost in the migrations and began to understand the codes of those errors. Those codes of errors were then called constellations. That is, people who were lost thousands of years ago saw that the stars were sometimes fixed, sometimes moved. So if they could follow them at night, during the day, they could understand what paths were to follow. This is how they begin to tell stories that narrate the initiation path from the skies. But they do not narrate what the stars experience, they narrate what humans experience when those stars are there. And that's where astrology was born. Astrology is not real, it's a psychology. It's psychology repeated for so many thousands of years that it became a pattern for us. So now, any human who is born the first week of August, like me, I'm going to act like a lion, but not because the stars made me a lion, but because in the human genetic code, when those stars are located there, the people who are born in that month have to, no matter what, try to see how to lead those who will come further ahead, because that's how the tribe worked. It was calculated to generate the leaders and all that kind of thing. And thus, patterns were repeated over and over thousands of years and ended up being genetic. So, how do I come to contemplate the entire journey of the I am? Not by observing the stars, but seeing what codes are inside me that are conditioning my point of observation. Where am I observing it from? The ancients then, observing these paths, what they did was design new paths, creating temples, pyramids, stone structures that were aligned with those paths so that we could now physically could walk within them and do the task of going inward into the star. In time, cultures were constantly preparing themselves only along that path. The goal of all ancestral civilization was not to reach God, but to be God. The Atlanteans did not have many gods. They did have many points of observation to reflect themselves in God. That is why that in antiquity it said that they were polytheistic. There were no polytheistic civilizations. There were civilizations or beings that reflected aspects of divinity and honored the different aspects of the divine. It's like today, having the 12 constellations of the zodiac and creating a worship for each one. And I make my worship of the moon in Sagittarius. It's me. But I am honoring myself on the outside to understand myself on the inside. So, this is what we did in all ancient civilizations. Honor the internal path to become the ultimate observer in the triangle with the eye. Sit in the middle and be able to observe absolutely everything. That was the primary goal of every civilization, culture, and it still is, but there's a slight mistake. Let's go back to that. There's an error in the system, and I don't know if you've noticed, but in all humanity today is out of sync with time. Ancestral cultures knew when there was a full moon, when there's a new moon. They knew when to plant, when to harvest, when to go get married. They knew when the solstice was, the equinox, when one cycle began, when the other ended. They knew when it was going to rain, when it was not going to rain. They had all that perception. But today, not so much, except when it's time to go to sleep. We don't know when to wake up, what day it is. The calendar is all out of sync. Sometimes we have Roman numerals, sometimes it's Greek. There is a leap month. Others are missing days. It's a disaster. I don't know if you've noticed. but we have normalized something that is wrong. The week can't ever start on a Monday, for example. Monday, the moon day. Monday, you sleep. It's a day for emotions. However, we start on Monday. Why? Because someone came up with it. Because Sunday, the day of the sun, we had to do something else, honor God. But those little things that we have normalized have broken our inner rhythm. As we disconnected ourselves from the skies and nature, it has broken and outdated the heart from what is called philosophy. And to truly arrive at really correcting that big mistake, we need to align thought and emotion. And this is only done only by respecting the cycles of time, calibrating the cycles of time within our body and outwards. So that's why I was telling you, and I leave you with this task because my time is running out here. To do the path of the I am and correct the philosophy of your own existence, I recommend that from now on, you think, when is your birthday? And start your journey of the I am. That is the beginning of the cycle. And from there, begin to build what is your philosophy, what is your true path here on earth and in time and space. Learn something new every day and start weaving the philosopher's stone. In all ancient cultures, it was believed to turn lead into gold. In reality, the lead is us. We are the heavy ones. So, the philosopher's stone, I correct time and space, and I can anchor the divinity into matter. So, task, think about your birthday, and the next day from your birthday, start to outline what do you want to learn every day during that cycle. And let's see how we awaken the philosopher's stones of the I am. Thank you.